Okay, y'all, this document is 922 pages and it is crazy insane. So I'm going to get through it. I'm currently, this is part three, and I'm currently still in the authors. And I know some of these authors, I'm familiar with a little bit, but I'll deep dive into it. So Stephen Moore is a conservative economist, and author. He is currently a senior economist at FreedomWorks, a distinguished fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and a Fox News analyst. From 2005 to 2014, Moore served as the senior economics writer for the Wall Street Journal editorial page and as a member of the journal's editorial board. He still contributes regularly to the journal's editorial page. He's a frequent lecturer to business, investment, and university audiences around the world on the U.S. economic and political outlook in Washington, D.C. Now, fun fact, Fox News was sued by Dominion voting machines, and in court, and I'll read that, you can check that document because I've read that entire court document. In court, um, Dominion voting machines was able to prove that Fox News knowingly lied about the 2020 election, and that they knew that it was a lie. And what Fox News argued in court was that they were able to lie because they are not a news organization, they are for entertainment. And anyway, they ended up having to pay, I think, $678 million to Dominion voting machines. Smartmatic is another voting machine because they were damaged. Their reputation was damaged from these lies. Smartmatic just sued. I think they just ended up settling with Newsmax, and it hasn't been disclosed what that settlement is yet. So anyway, so then we have Maura Namdar. She's an attorney and is an attorney and senior fellow at the American Foreign Policy Council. She speaks fluent Farsi and is an expert on U.S. national security, human rights, global communications, the Middle East, and international law. Maura served as senior advisor for critical issues at the U.S. State Department and was appointed by President Donald Trump to perform the duties of the Assistant Secretary of State for Consular Affairs. She served as Vice President of Legal Compliance and Risk at the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Peter Navarro. He holds a PhD in economics from Harvard and was one of only 3 senior White House officials to serve with Donald Trump from the 2016 campaign to the end of the president's first term. He was the West Wing's chief China hawk and trade czar and served as director of the Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy and Defense Production Act policy coordinator. His books include The Coming China Wars, 2006, Death by China, 2011, Crouching Tiger, 2015, and his White House memoirs In Trump Time, 2021, and Taking Back Trump's America, 2022. His top rated Taking Back Trump's America podcast appears on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. He went to jail for contempt of Congress. He didn't comply to a subpoena. William Perry Pindy was born in Cheyenne, Wyoming. He earned a BA and MA from George Washington University, was a U.S. Marine Corps captain, and earned his JD from the University of Wyoming College of Law. He was an attorney on Capitol Hill, a senior official for President Ronald Reagan, and leader of the Bureau of Land Management for President Donald Trump. For 30 years, he was president of Mountain States Legal Foundation, where he argued and won cases before the Supreme Court of the United States. He authored 5 books, including Sagebrush Rebel, Reagan's Battle with Environmental Extremists, and Why It Matters Today. Moving on, Max Primorak is director of the Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies at Heritage Foundation. He was acting chief operating officer and assistant to the administrator, Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance at the U.S. Agency for International Development. Previously, he was the deputy director of Iran's reconstruction program at the U.S. Department of State and a senior advisor in the Office of the Secretary. Max was educated at Franklin and Marshall College and the University of Chicago. Roger Severino is Vice President of Domestic Policy at the Heritage Foundation. As Director of the Office for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services from 2017 to 2021, he led a team of more than 250 staff enforcing civil rights, conscience, and health information privacy laws. Roger subsequently founded the HHS Accountability Project at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He holds a JD from Harvard Law School, an MA in Public Policy from Carnegie Mellon University, and a BA from the University of Southern California. Chiron K. Skinner is president and CEO of the Foundation for America and the World, Taube Professor of International Relations and Politics at Pepperdine University School of Public Policy, with Glenn Campbell Research Fellow at the Glenn Campbell Research Fellow at the Hoover Institution, and a visiting fellow and senior advisor at the Heritage Foundation. Skinner served as Director of Policy Planning and Senior Advisor at the U.S. Department of State from 2018 to 2019, and was a member of the Defense Business Board at the U.S. Department of Defense in 2020. Skinner holds an MA and a PhD in political science from Harvard University and undergraduate degrees from Spelman College and Sacramento City College. Brooks D. Tucker served in the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs as Assistant Secretary for Congressional and Legislative Affairs from 2017 to 2021 and as Acting Chief of Staff from 2020 to 2021. He helped to craft the policy framework for President-elect Trump's transition team and served as the Senior Policy Advisor for National Security and Veterans Affairs to Senator Richard Burr from 2010 to 2015, a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel. Brooks served in Afghanistan, Iraq, North Africa, and Caucasus, and the Western Pacific. He's a graduate of the University of Maryland, Marine Corps Infantry Officer Course, and Marine Corps Command and Staff College, and holds a certificate in legislative studies from Georgetown University. Hans A. von Spakovsky, I probably butchered that name, I apologize, is Senior Legal Fellow and Manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative in the Edwin Meese Center 3, Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. He's a former member of President Donald Trump's Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. From 2006 to 2007, von Spakovsky was a commissioner on the Federal Election Commission. He served as career counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice from 2002 to 2005. Russ Vought is founder and president of the Center for Renewing America. A longtime conservative leader on Capitol Hill, Russ served in President Trump's cabinet as director of the Office of Management and Budget, where he oversaw the implementation of the presidential budget, key policies on deregulation, and a landmark effort to eliminate critical race theory and other radical ideologies in executive agencies. Prior to his White House service, Russ spent nearly 2 decades in the broader conservative movement on Capitol Hill, including as policy director for the House Republicans Conference, executive director of the Republican Study Committee, and legislative assistant to former U.S. Senator Phil Gramm. Russ graduated from with a BA from Wheaton College and received a JD from George Washington University Law. William L. Walton is chairman of the Resolute Protector Foundation and host of The Bill Walton Show. In 2016 and 2017, Mr. Walton served in President-elect Donald Trump's transition team as agency action leader for all the federal economic agencies. He served as chairman of the board and CEO of Allied Capital Corporation, a $6 billion NYSE traded private investment firm from 1997 to 2010. He is the immediate past president of the Council for National Policy. His extensive board service included the Heritage Foundation, American Conservative Union, American Enterprise Institute, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, National Venture Capital Association, and Financial Services Roundtable. Paul Winfrey is a distinguished fellow in economic policy and public leadership at the Heritage Foundation. Before rejoining Heritage in 2018, Paul was deputy assistant to the president, deputy director of the Domestic Policy Council, and director of budget policy at the White House. During the 2016 presidential transition, he led the team responsible for the Office of Management and Budget. He also has served as a senior staff member for the U.S. Senate Committee on the Budget. Paul served in both the Biden and Trump administrations for 3 terms as the chair of the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board that oversees the Fulbright program and educational exchanges sponsored by the Department of State. Now, we are going to editors. These are the editors. Paul Dans is director of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project at the Heritage Foundation, organizing policy and personnel recommendations and training for appointees in the next presidential administration before joining Heritage. He served in the Trump administration as chief of staff at the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, at OPM's White House liaison, and as a senior advisor at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Paul has extensive experience in high stakes commercial litigation and worked for several large international law firms in New York City from 1997 to 2012 before founding his own law firm. He is a graduate of the University of Virginia School of Law and received his graduate and undergraduate degrees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Stephen Groves is the Margaret Thatcher Fellow in the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation. Groves served in the Trump administration, first as Ambassador Nikki Haley's chief of staff at the U.S. mission to the United Nations. He later joined the White House as assistant special counsel representing the White House in the Mueller investigation. Groves also served as White House deputy secretary, press secretary. His prior positions include senior counsel for the U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations and associate at Boies, Schiller, and Flexner LLP. Groves holds an LLM from Georgetown University Law Center, a JD from Ohio Northern University's College of Law, and a BA from Florida State University. So now we're going to get into the contributors, and I'll do that in the next video.